Welcome to another Blue Ridge Heating and Air Seminar, the Refrigerant Change of 2025, Part 2.
This is Brian Wilson, and we're going to go over the refrigerant change for 2025.
Before we get started, one thing we'll do is we'll have we'll stop, ask questions, and then we'll jump right back into it. We'd like to record this, so I'll hand you a mic, or Pete will hand you a mic, so we can ask the question, so we can hear it properly on the recording. So,
Or that, or I'll just redo the question, that way they can hear it.
You can do that too as well.
Yeah.
Whatever works.
Okay. All right. So, Blue Ridge Heating and Air, engineered comfort solutions. Some of y'all are current customers, and if you're not, we hope you will be soon. So what's the deal with the refrigerant change? So we're going to slide through the deck here and learn as much as we can. Quentin Cook said, if we are prepared, we shall not fear. So this is a slideshow and information created by Bailey, Shannon here, and Brian, and I am going to be the presenter, and we'll go from there. So what is R454B, also known as Puron, Advance, or Solstice? Well, R454B will commonly be used in the heating and air system starting in 2025. It's chosen because it's much better for the environment compared to the older refrigerants, having a lower potential to warm the planet. This change helps the industry meet the new environmental rules aimed at reducing harmful emissions. When most people think of refrigerant today, most people will say Freon. We'll get called, hey, can you come and check my Freon? I think it's leaking. Or can you charge up my Freon? Freon's kind of the brand name. Refrigerant is what it is. Kind of like Coke is cola and Pepsi's cola. Freon is refrigerant. So some people call it Freon. Well, that Freon started getting phased out it was R22, got phased out in 2010. And the most common refrigerant today is R410A. A fun fact that Bailey wants to give us, another refrigerant, R32, will also be used in the new order, but isn't as environmentally friendly as R454B. R32 will be found in some of the brands like Daikin and Goodman. So why is 410A being phased out and R454B being mandated to use in the new systems? Well, the EPA supports the transition to R454B as part of a broader effort to reduce pollution and create a healthier environment for our future generations. R454B is recognized globally for its lower carbon emissions, aligning with the scientific consensus and the goals of the Montreal Protocol to combat climate change. R454B has a global warming potential, or GWP, of 466. This is a 78% reduction of the GWP compared to R410A, which is GWP of 2,088. Another fun fact, 410A is the most common used refrigerant over the past decade, but R454B has been in use for the past several years in other countries. So it's not brand new, it's been in use for a while, it's just kind of new to us. So what questions do we have so far? All right, no questions so far, so we'll move on.
Yeah, I have a question. How would we know what kind of gas we would have in our existing units?
So the question is, how would we know what kind of refrigerants in your existing system now? Mm-hmm. Brian, you want to take that one?
Most of you'll have a label on your outdoor unit, and it will have the refrigerant and what the weight is that was installed from the factory in there. A lot of the 410A will have a pink sticker on there, or even on the indoor unit, you'll have a pink sticker, or it'll be labeled for such and such.
Okay.
So,
would it depend on the year, the vintage of it, and make, or
not necessarily. In 1996, they started coming out with the 410A, and at that time, we were installing 410A and R22. That was the old refrigerant phased out.
Correct.
And so in 2010, they stopped manufacturing the 22 systems,
right,
and you had to buy the 410A systems. At that point, you had to get the 410A. Now, some of the systems would be dry shipped in 2011, 12, 13, where they had no refrigerant in it, would match up with the R22 systems. Going forward, from what I understand, you will not be able to do that. 410A, or we will not be able to get any dry 410A systems. Say in 2025, 26, 27, you need something to replace your unit. There will not be any dry shipments of systems for the heat pump to replace them. There will be air handlers, there will be other things like that, but they will not be any outdoor units like that.
So the pressures vary enough that you cannot replace 410A with the new refrigerant?
Say that again, please.
In other words, can you replace 410A in an existing unit with a new refrigerant if you purge the system, or the
No, sir.
pressures are not compatible with that?
The compressors will not work like that. They're designed for the 454B or they're designed for the 410A. The refrigerant are very similar, but there's something in the components that will not allow it to pump. So
The pressures are probably different.
not that much. From R422 to 410A, it was like 50 to 75% higher. I don't know if that's exactly right, but along those lines. These pressures will be 2%, 5%, depending on the area. So, anybody else? Yes, ma'am? You won't have to replace them at all until they they die or they're no longer feasible to replace or fix. So, you would be replacing them at that time. So you don't have to do nothing at the time. R410A refrigerant will still be available, but like R22, the price went up very high, very quickly. And that's what we're looking at. So I don't know how high, it's whatever the market goes on.
So Brian, you're not gonna be able to put the R454B existing unit unless it's specifically designed for that refrigerant, right?
That is correct.
So the old ones will have to get the old refrigerant as necessary until they die, at which time you replace with a 454 unit.
That's correct.
Do they have a sunset clause or ruling now on how long they're gonna produce R410A, or are they gonna let the market deal with it and just keep charging people more and more for purchasing that 410A?
At the end of 24, you're no longer able to manufacture 410A equipment. Now, anything that was manufactured can be sold in 25. What I understand in 26, you're no longer able to do that. You have to install it in 25.
Okay, again, but is 410A gonna be available? How long?
Oh,
Do they have a sunset?
You're talking about the refrigerant.
Refrigerant.
I'm sorry, I was going with equipment. Yes, I think in 2036.
2036?
Yes, sir.
At this point?
Yes. That's 12 years. Right now, it's
Yeah.
11 years, say.
Which isn't bad unless you just install the unit like a year
Well,
ago.
I think it'll still be around. R22 is still around. So, and that's been phased out since 2010.
All right, moving along. Why are people worried about the flammability of the R454B? Many people are worried about the flammability of the new refrigerant. Every new heating and air system will have several safety precautions. For example, they'll have a leak sensor on every unit to detect a refrigerant as a safety precaution. If your system recognizes a leak, the compressor stops pumping and a fan turns on. As far as flammability goes, you would need a temperature or a flame of 925 degrees Fahrenheit to make the new refrigerant ignite. R454B is an A2L, which is mildly flammable. R454B and R410A respond very similar in the system, so you don't have to worry about your system blowing up. R454B has already been used in other parts of the world in places like Europe and in Asia. So a lot of questions we get is, should I wait to buy a new system or am I safe to purchase one now? Well, it's completely up to you. It's safe now and will be safe later. The new models in 2025 accommodating the new refrigerant will cost about 10 to 15% more than what they do now. R410A will ramp down in production starting now and ending in 2036. So systems that use the R410A will be able to be repaired and recharged through 2036. Installing a new unit today does not jeopardize your future of serviceability. And starting now, Blue Ridge vans will also be carrying all three refrigerants, 410A, R454B, and R32. And other companies are also doing the same thing. So having to carry all three will cause prices on the refrigerants to go up. So part two, should I wait to buy a new system or am I safe to purchase one now? You will be fine with both waiting or purchasing a new one now. Here are some facts about the new equipment. New heating and air models are designed to be more environmentally friendly and may include innovative features to support R454B. Although they may come with a higher price tag and potential initial kinks, these models are technically and similar to the other ones, ensuring reliable operation and comparable manufacturer's warranties. Question.
Question. I understand that the SEER rating, SEER, SEER rating on the new equipment coming out starting in 2025 is going to be required, be a higher SEER rating than the existing, the low end, I'm not sure, you guys would know, 12 or 14 or something is not going to be available anymore. It's only going to be a higher SEER rating, meaning higher components, more efficiency. And can you comment on that?
Yes, it's a SEER 2 rating. They've changed it from a SEER and they just went to SEER 2. So everything is geared toward being more efficient, saving on power and things like that. Everything is going to be more, I think 14.4 is the minimum you can go, and that's a SEER 2 rating.
So that'll comply with the new ratings that are only going to be available in the 2025 manufactured equipment.
Yes.
All the AHRI numbers show for the system. So like when you take and you go from a SEER to a SEER 2, you got to have an AHRI matchup for that. And that's
Does that have a matchup what?
An AHRI number. And it's just saying that both units are compatible. The outdoor, the indoor are compatible. That way the refrigerant has to match up the SEER rating, and all those numbers will align inside the parameter for the SEER 2 rating.
We just can't put one piece of equipment with another and say they're good. They have to have a number to go with them. And that's a government number, AHRI. I don't know what the terminology means, but if you just go on their website, you can see even with your own equipment, just putting your own, some of it may come up, some of it may not because of how old it is.
The acronym you said was Harry, Raymond,
Apple, Harry,
HRA.
AHRI.
AHRI. All
Yes.
right, thank you.
So, yes, Bill.
It seems like the weak spot of heat pumps has always been how low a temperature will they effectively operate with some reasonable measure of efficiency. And obviously they get to the point where if it's low enough, they're just the same as resistance heat, and you might as well go to resistance heat or some alternate system. What's the best system you can currently offer, and how low a temperature can it go, say, with a COP of at least 2 or something like that?
Well, yesterday we installed this equipment, the Move Air. It's supposed to be 5 degrees, is that correct?
It'll go down to, it's 100% efficient down to -4. The COP on that is rated at like 0.59.
But that's under optimum conditions. What's the COP when you're down 5 degrees?
That's it.
That is it. That's 3.59.
So you're getting 3.5 times as much heat as you would from resistance heat at that.
That is correct.
At what degree temperature?
So this one, that unit right there,
Sounds too good to be true.
It does.
that unit right there does come with heat strips as well.
But why?
But well, so if anything, you don't have to have them. They're not required, according to the manufacturer. Logically, for me, if that outdoor unit was to stop working at any point, now you have the electric help keep the house.
What about for defrost mode and so on? Don't they usually use the strip heaters to help in defrost mode?
They do.
So if you don't have them, how does that affect your unit?
The system, either the fan will shut off and it'll go into defrost by itself. That system there, we had the door off yesterday and the fan did not come on because the air temperature was too low. As soon as we put the door on, the fan came on. And we didn't see that in the manual, but we just, from other equipment we installed, I said, put the door on. Put the door on, it starts slow and just ramped up to the right speed. So there's a lot of sensors in there that do what needs to be done to help it get to that temperature. So the technology is there. And as I said, these systems have been installed in Canada for the past 5 years.
Well, if it really operates the way you're saying, there would be absolutely no reason to have a backup propane, because if it'll go to -5 with that efficiency, I haven't seen -5 in the last 20 years. I've seen 0 occasionally, but
Yeah,
that's about as low as I've seen.
right. So, sir, you had a question?
What are some of the potential kinks that it spoke of?
I think the sensor. The sensor is designed, if there's a refrigerant leak, the compressor shuts off outside and a blower comes on. Basically, the reason the blower comes on is to dissipate that volume of refrigerant in the system. So, and basically that's the only thing that's really new to the systems other than the conventional systems that we have today. So I know for our refrigerant leak detectors, we trust them, but they're a meter. you know, so that's when we see what happens and how it works out. So that's my only concern with it, to be honest with you. Other than that, everything's still the same. So,
Do they also have a high side sensor in addition to the low?
what do you mean?
In other words, if the maximum pressures are exceeded?
Yes, sir, they will cut out. So, and a low pressure cut out as
Of
well.
course, you have the low also,
Yeah.
and that tells you your refrigerant's probably gone.
Anybody else?
All right, moving along. So in conclusion, at Blue Ridge Heating and Air, we prioritize your comfort and peace of mind during these industry changes, like the shift to the eco-friendly R454B. While this change is industry-wide, our focus is to ensure a seamless transition for you. As our valued customer, you contribute to a healthier environment and enjoy a hassle-free service. Just call Blue Ridge Heating and Air and we'll handle everything, maintaining your peace of mind.
We appreciate you guys, appreciate you allowing us into your house to take care of your system. So we want to do a good job for you guys. Yes, sir.
On inventory, I've been reading a little bit about it. You're going to have inventory up until 25.
Yes, sir.
You'll have 410A inventory. And I'm nearing the end of my life cycle on the 410A system. So I have to balance whether I want to purchase a 410A system now and keep that and put up with the higher prices of 410A, or do I just need to go ahead and let this thing go bust and just wait for it to quit in the next 2 years and then go with a new system? I guess my question is, in their instructions about inventory, they say if you buy it up until 25, you get the 410A system. After 25, it's going to be the 454B, and you don't have any choice in that. But if you take delivery on a 410A system, then you can hold it until you need it. Would that be applicable? And what does it mean to take delivery?
My thoughts on that would be you get a deposit and it'd be holding either in the warehouse in Asheville where we get our distribution from, or we hold it here or something like that. And having the equipment available for next year. And it's still allowed that we're still allowed to do that. Did that answer your question?
Well, as I understand it, you'll be allowed to install them through 25.
Yes, sir. And that would be an inspection
You would
department.
hold it here. If I purchased a unit, you would hold it here?
I'd probably hold it in Asheville, let them, because they have a bigger warehouse.
Okay.
And I don't know what I know they hold it for a while, but I don't know how long they would hold it for. We would have to pay for it because they don't want to hold it unless we pay them for it.
Okay.
So,
Okay, but is this kind of like getting new software? When this 454B system comes online, what happened in the past when 410A came on? Were there a lot of kinks in it to get ironed out? I don't want to be a beta tester for 454B.
I understand.
All right, and I'd rather get one that's been proven, weighed out a little bit before, and I probably won't outlast a 410A system if I put a new one in. So,
Right.
kind of a balance.
It sure is. But at the same time, I just lost my thought. 410A, or 22 to 410A, the pressures went from such and such to very high. So the metal, the copper tubing, the coils were not on board with that. So we had a lot of coil leaks in the beginning, and even in installation practices. So now we already have the installation practices for 410A, and the 454B are very similar in pressures. So there's not going to be there's not going to be hardly any transition on that end of it for us or for many companies around. The only issue I think is the sensor is the only thing that's changing, and the refrigerant's changing, and the compressors will have to be compatible for that new refrigerant. That's all it's down to.
The sense issue of the whole equipment, because you've got that refrigerant sensor and say it starts saying that you got a refrigerant leak, but you do not have a refrigerant leak. I've got people in other companies that I've talked to, and they've installed them. They've been back 30, 40 times to the same unit, and the manufacturer doesn't know how to proceed with this faulty sensor. So it's kind of like, do you want to be the test goat now, or do you want to let it go 2 or 3 years and then they figure out all the kinks, then you pull the trigger in. So that's still, the sensors is going to be the biggest issue of the whole thing that I see with it.
And that's the biggest, the compressor and the refrigerant and that sensor, those three things.
Are the sensors that are on these systems in use in the systems in Europe and Asia right now?
I'm going to say yes.
So it's not really going to be that much test dummy in here, or test
Who's
Maybe.
making the sand?
I do not know, or where they're coming from. I didn't say that. Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's say that the system needs replacing, or at least, let's say my compressor goes, you have to replace the outside unit. Since it's the compressor's the main glitch, would you possibly be able to retain the indoor coil and the air handler, for instance, or do you pretty much need to replace all components in the system in order to go to the new refrigerant?
As of right now, I believe the compressors, say if you had to change out the compressor, the indoor coil is either rated for a 410A or 454B, and with very little modifications, from what I understand.
So it could be rated for both?
Yes. R22 coils and R410A coils were out for a long time, but you had to make modifications to match the refrigerant. So the expansion valve had to match the refrigerant. So that's what I understand for right now. So
Meaning you could perhaps keep some of the existing components except for the compressor?
Yes.
Unit.
So, yes, sir.
With the new 454B CO2 equipment going forward, would the existing thermostat unit, digital units and all that, would that be compatible, or does that need to be changed out also? If you were going with a new unit?
Most likely it would be compatible, unless you went to a communicating system where there's only 4 wires in there and it does a lot more for you, where the fans and the compressors adjust. But the conventional system, 90%, 95% of the thermostats will be compatible, okay. I would say.
But the newer, most efficient systems are generally going to be communicating, right?
Yes, when you get into higher SEER systems, yes. But even this system here, I can wire it communicating or conventional. So there's a lot of that involved, a lot of that around, I should say. So.
This is a communicating. Yeah, so that's a smart one.
Because say if you have 3 thermostats in your house, communicating system, they talk to each other, right?
No, sir, they don't. They only talk to the indoor unit and the outdoor unit. This system will talk to itself. That system will talk to that cell. All 3 of them will not talk to each other. So that I've seen, unless you get into a commercial application where a building system would take care of that.
Well, for instance, I have a system with 3 zones.
Okay.
I have a thermostat in each zone, but a master thermostat in one zone that has the Wi-Fi and also certainly communicates with the other thermostats in some way. I don't know just how.
I was under the impression you're talking about 3 systems in the house. You have 3 zones in the house. One outdoor unit, 1 indoor unit, and they're communicating.
Right.
I was thinking 3 systems for the house, 3 indoor units, and 3.
Well, yeah.
So some houses have that as well.
There you have 3 independent systems.
That's exactly right.
Well, to me, zone systems are wonderful, particularly with the variable capacity compressor.
Oh, yes.
The old systems was pretty lousy because you had a single capacity outdoor unit in several zones, so it just wasn't going to work very smoothly again. Because it didn't have variable capacity.
Right now, we have the modulating systems, and then we have the 2-stage systems, and we also have the single-stage system. So, and then most of our single stages are starting at 15.8 SEER, I believe. So, and that's pretty good. So, and they also, the tax credit, you can use them for the tax credit, and that's usually the one we install.
So what about tax credit for the units in 2025? Is that for the SEER 2 you're talking about?
Yes, anything over for like 15.8. The EER has to match, and the HSPF have to match. There's a certain level once you get above that. But even still, our single stage equipment that we're installing matches that.
Minimum was 15.2 here and 11.7 SEER, so that's the minimum. And our units are 15.8 and 11.9.
12.2.
12.2, yeah, they're right.
And then the HSPF is like 8.1, and it has to be 7.8 to meet. So even with our, I wouldn't say it's an entry level, because I think the numbers, it's not a builder's model. It's our entry level. I don't like the term builder's modules because it says cheap.
And what is your builder's, or your?
Our entry level is the one we were just talking about, 15.8 SEER.
Okay.
So, and we have a lot of them out there, and people are very pleased with them. So
when you say 2-stage system, you're referring to having, say, a propane furnace coupled to use at lower temperatures. I mean, when you say 2-stage, what do you?
I was referring to the heat pump. It has a first stage, then a second stage. So on a 70-degree day, and you're calling for cooling, I don't need to go in second stage. I can run on low first stage very nicely. But if it gets to 90-degree days, I'm going to jump up this. I'll start in first stage, then jump to second stage, cool the house down, and then.
So the stages are all built within the same unit?
Yes, sir. And they're determined by the thermostat. That's the driver.
Yeah, I guess I've never heard stages used that way. I've always heard it used, say, where you have backup heat source.
Yes.
That work in conjunction. So you're saying there's two stages, and one stage will be more effective once the temperature gets to a certain level? I mean, how does that work? How does that stage get more efficient if it's using the same compressor and coil?
The compressor itself will jump in the second stage.
Okay, like operate at a higher speed?
Yes, sir.
Just like with a variable speed compressor, or just a compressor with two different speeds or something there?
Two different speeds. The variable.
What about variable speed compressor?
Variable is like putting your foot on the gas pedal. That's how I assume, that's how I see it. So if I need to go 70 miles an hour, I'm going 70 miles an hour. But that same compressor can run at 40 miles an hour very nicely, and it will ramp up and slow down based on the temperatures of the coil, air temperature, and the indoor air temperature.
Just at two different speeds?
No, sir. It would just keep on whatever it has to do.
You have continuously variable compressors
That's correct.
and fans, presumably.
Exactly.
So if you think about it as like in your car, and you turn your AC on and then you got your fans, right? So a single stage would be going from 0 to 5, back to 0. That's a single stage. 100% all the time, 0 when it's off. A two stage, you're gonna go from 1 to 2. So if it's a 90-degree day, you're gonna throw that thing all the way up, and then as you start cooling off, you're gonna bump that down to the number 1, so you don't have so much airflow. Fully modulating, now you've got 1 through 5, and you can adjust that to wherever you're most comfortable. That's what that unit's doing.
Where you set it, and it will maintain that temperature.
So if you have a full variable system, then it's not really stages, it just will work. And which would presumably be your top end units would be full variable.
That is correct.
Speed. And the two stage would be something in between.
This system here is variable, and I don't know if you feel the fan blowing on you right now, but it's probably not calling for heat, but it's constantly moving air, and it seems to run longer, but you don't have those swings in temperatures where you'll have a slight, like a 1 degree, where the conventional systems, you'll have almost 2 degree swing, where they have to come on and go off, where these tend to stay on. So this way, I'm not using as much power coming on and off, because that's where most of your power is being consumed. Starting, stopping, and it just makes it more even temperature or more comfortable temperature.
So except for price, everybody should get a full variable speed system, right?
I think so. So we're very pleased with it. Pardon me?
What about the maintenance?
I see there's less maintenance on these than I do on the conventional systems. We don't have capacitors. Now, we have very little issues with them, but when there are issues, you have to really dig into them. So, because there's a lot of sensors and temperatures, but everything's right there on the board for you, and there's great tech support if we need it. So,
Thank you guys for coming. Get you a biscuit, cup of coffee. We'll still be around if you have any other things, comments or questions.